Outside the realms of rhythm games, there aren't many titles that really make music their main focus. You've got a few, such as the incredibly strange Deus Ex Machina from 1984, as well as the less strange video game musical that was Epic Mickey 2. While neither of them were able to be super successful with their ideas, a new title has come along attempting to fuse music and gaming together. We're going to take a quick peek at Karmaflow, the rock opera video game.
Let's see here. Ooh. Oh my.
Before I go too far into what Karmaflow is and how it plays, we gotta go over a little bit of history. In 2013, developer Basecamp Games hosted a Indiegogo campaign to raise funds for the creation of an immersive 3D platform puzzle adventure game featuring several rock and metal singers, a band, and a full orchestra. The asking price for all this was 50,000 euros, but the campaign only rose 30,883 euros. Now, to you and me, almost 40,000 euros might seem like a lot of money, but when it comes to video games and what the developers wanted this game to be, it's not the price that they really needed to make Karmaflow work and become what they wanted to be, and that's very obvious. Why do I bring all of this up? Well, that's because Karmaflow is a huge project that was underfunded, and having played the current released version of the game, it plays like a huge project that was underfunded. Their Indiegogo campaign promised that the game would have several rock and metal singers in it, as well as have some sort of a concert with the music that was made for the game. I don't really know what's going on with all of that, but I'm mainly going to focus on the game. They did fulfill their promise with all of the singers, even though that may have been where most of their budget actually went to. Vocalists such as Mark Hudson from Dragon Force, Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth, and Elisa White Glues from Arch Enemy all made an appearance on the soundtrack. And the soundtrack is definitely one of the better parts of Karmaflow. You can tell that there was a ton of love put into music for this game, as each track does a pretty good job to fill the emotions of each scene. And each vocalist does a great job bringing their own unique sounds to the music, although the lyrics don't always work that well together. But then again, Karmaflow is an opera after all, and strange lyrical structure is something that just tends to happen with operas, as they attempt to tell an in-depth story entirely through song. But you never really get a full story with Karmaflow. From what I can discern from the game, you play as the Karma Keeper, a being with the ability to bring things to life by infusing them with karma, or basically kill them by removing their karma. You seem to be the last of your kind? Maybe. It's up to you to save the world? Maybe. It's hard to figure out much more than that in the story, as Karmaflow doesn't actually have one distinct story, but several. Currently, only Act 1 of Karmaflow is released and available on Steam, and it consists of two different sections or chapters. One of them is in a snowy forest area, and the other one is in a swampy mountainous area. Neither area seems to have anything to do with the other, as they have their own stories and events taking place. The only thing that seems to stay the same is who you play as and what your abilities are. I mean, at the end of the first area, you can actually choose an option to end the world. And yet in the second area, you're still in the world. Throughout the game, you can pick up different abilities here and there, but most of them deal with movement, and movement is definitely the thing that the game does the best. I mean, Karmaflow is a third-person platformer, and the Karma Keeper's movement is really fluid and feels very smooth to control. It's very easy to transition between each type of movement to get where you want to go, as if you can actually figure out where you need to go in order to continue in the game. There's only one ability you get later on in the game that doesn't deal with movement. That just helps you see what things you can take karma from or give karma to. And all of the puzzles in the game are basically just revolved around that. You are always taking karma from one thing and giving it to something else. Even if it's for a sad attempt at a boss fight in this game, it never changes when it comes to the puzzle. The only kind of puzzle is really just trying to figure out where you need to go. The level design of Karmaflow is really bad at informing you of which direction you should be headed in. Some parts of the game are simple A to B sections, but then there's the areas where the game opens up, and it's difficult to not get lost. The first chapter is very dark. Even with the gamma settings turned up, it's still really hard to see where the land is. There are so many places in Chapter 1 that look like you can get to them, and many places you can actually get to them, only to find out they don't lead anywhere, or could cause you to get stuck on geometry. The second chapter of the game replaces darkness with thick fog that can't be seen through, as well as really tall grass that blocks your vision in many directions. Sometimes you only have to deal with the fog or the high grass, and that's difficult enough to navigate, but then there are sections where you have to deal with both the fog and the grass, and it's impossible to have any sense of direction as to where you need to go. My guess as to why Basecamp used fog and darkness so much is probably to save on some frame rate, since it doesn't have to render as much stuff at once, since you're not seeing as much stuff at once. But it really takes away so much from the game, and I didn't see where it could have helped my frame rate all that much. Chapter 2 also has larger open areas, just like Chapter 1, but they're way too open, and I constantly find myself hitting dead ends, going in circles, or getting to places backwards. It doesn't really help that the game is riddled with glitches and bugs. Every time you come across a checkpoint, the game will pause for a moment, making it so easy for you to get disoriented. I've had my character models stay invisible when I respawn so I could no longer see them. I've had these ice blocks that I had to create that were supposed to block wind, and this wind tunnel actually not block the wind, so I couldn't continue down the tunnel and had to restart the game. Oh, and I think this guy is actually supposed to be standing on a rock or something, but the rock didn't actually spawn. The devs also left some kind of debug message in Chapter 2 that shows up on the screen whenever you get a rock thrown at you. It's actually very good, because if they didn't have this otherwise, I would have no idea that there was supposed to be a rock being thrown at me, since the game doesn't really have anything to inform you that that is going on. Thanks to the message, I know where one's going to land and can hopefully dodge it. Due to this, the game is very, very unpolished in many areas, and it's a darn shame since a lot of the game is actually pretty nifty. Like I said before, the music is great for the most part, if not a little bit repetitive at times, and the character design in Karmaflow, it's just really awesome. I love the way these characters look. I really like the Karma Keeper's design, and I really like the Karma Keeper's movement, and that only makes it worse that the game itself can't live up to everything else. Even if all of the bugs and glitches were fixed at Karmaflow, I don't feel like the game would be all that much better due to poor design. Basecamp has constantly been releasing updates for Karmaflow since its release, and I do have to give them some credit for that, since a lot of games would have abandoned this project as soon as it came out the door. Although I do have to say that it is far too little, far too late. There is also talk that Basecamp is working on an Act 2 for the game, since what's currently released is only Act 1, and Act 2 will release sometime in April. With the state that Karmaflow is currently in, I don't want to hear anything about an Act 2 until the first act is fixed up, and then I'm even still a little bit skeptical. The developers seem somewhat dedicated for now, and I feel that Karmaflow could have really benefited from Steam's Early Access program instead of a full release. Karmaflow does show promise that Basecamp has some idea of what they're doing when it comes to making a game, because the parts of the game that actually work pretty well. It's just not worth the asking price of $19.99, and definitely not worth the $39.99 price for the game's deluxe edition. I don't care if that includes Act 2 in April, I don't care if that includes the making of, the concept art, or even the soundtrack. This buggy and sometimes broken game is not worth $40. As always, let me know what you guys think of the game or this video in the comments section. I'm MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later. They get too close. Thankfully though, they're content with only attacking you once instead of actually killing you. And I can't say I've ever failed around by taking too much damage. That I've really failed much at all.